Hi, welcome to Chapter 19, the lymphatic system. I will try and keep this brief. I should just let you know that I changed some of the slides. The updated PowerPoints are on Web Study. If you've printed out Chapter 19 already, it's not worth printing out a whole new set of PowerPoints. You'll know where the changes are, and it's not that big of a deal. So first thing you want to know about the lymphatic system is that it is a one-way transport system that collects fluid from the tissues. This is fluid that has leaked out of the capillaries and into the tissues, so we call it interstitial fluid. And it returns that interstitial fluid to the bloodstream just before it gets back to the heart. And then these two things here are sort of the two main functions of the lymphatic system. The one is returning fluid back to the bloodstream, and then it also serves as a home for the immune system. And you're going to see most of the cells of your immune system come from the bloodstream, but they spend a lot of time hanging out in your lymphatic tissues. So we'll leave it at that. This we are going to skip. We don't really care about vessels and stuff like that. Then we're going to get to this. I will read this over while you look at this slide because this is going to make more sense. You have two main lymphatic ducts. You need to know the drainage pattern as illustrated on this slide here. So the top half of your torso and your right arm both drain into the right lymphatic duct. And then the rest of your body, so the left half of your torso and both lower extremities, all drain into what is called the thoracic duct. They both look the same and they dump the lymph into the subclavian veins, but the one on the right is called the right lymphatic duct. And because on the left this duct runs through the thoracic region, they call it the thoracic duct. So just know that pattern as it's explained in the text here. But that picture just makes more sense out of it for you. This picture we're not going to worry about. And then lymphatic capillaries. So what you want to know about lymphatic capillaries is, one, this term here where it says mini valves. So they operate kind of like the carabiner clips that people use sometimes to clip water bottles onto their backpacks and stuff. So they're easy to push in one direction, but then they get caught or they don't open up in the other direction. So what this means for your lymph is that it's really easy for lymph to get into a lymphatic vessel. But if it tries to flow back out, this mini valve thing here gets caught on the cell next to it. What this means is that it's really easy for lymph to get into your lymphatic tissue, which is a good thing. The downside of that is that it's also very easy for cancer cells to get into lymphatic capillaries as well. And this is one of the reasons why cancer tends to spread or metastasize through the lymphatic system, is because it's easier for a cancer cell to get into a lymphatic vessel than a blood vessel. But they have to be this permeable because the fluid that they're transporting has almost zero pressure. So if there's any resistance to taking up fluid into the lymphatic capillary, it would never make it back into the bloodstream. You also want to know that there are specialized lymphatic capillaries that are present in your small intestine, and we call them lacteals. Their job is to absorb dietary fats that you have not digested into something that's more water soluble. Then we get into lymphoid tissue, and this is where I have changed a few things. So the first thing you want to know about lymphoid tissue is that it is composed of a type of connective tissue called reticular connective tissue. Whenever you see lymphoid tissue, it is going to look like this. I have added these other two pictures from other slides in the PowerPoint, so it's not new information. But if you see these little circular structures here and there, the sort of lumpy accumulation of circular structures that is indicative of lymphoid tissue. Each one of those is called a follicle or a nodule. I don't care that you memorize those terms, just so that in lab, when we look at lymphoid or reticular tissue, you'll recognize it when you see it. So this is a lymph node, and you can see all the nodules. This is your spleen. You can see nodules in the spleen as well. This is a tonsil at lower magnification, so the nodules are still there, all those little circular structures, but they're just, they look smaller because it's at a lower magnification. So lymphoid tissue is composed of reticular connective tissue, and then what you want to know about reticular connective tissue is, oh look, there's a typo, is the fiber types that you find there and the cell types that you find there. So the tissue is named for the fibers which it contains, which are reticular fibers. This just means they form a branching network, which you can see here. I think it kind of looks like a bunch of grapes. And then that network of fibers serves as a scaffolding for your lymphocytes and your macrophages to attach to. So you have reticular cells that produce the fibers, and then lymphocytes, macrophages, and other cells that attach to the fibers. And as fluid trickles through this meshwork of protein fibers and cells, the lymphocytes and the macrophages can monitor and physically cleanse the lymph. So the cells that you find in lymphoid tissue are lymphocytes. They are your T cells and your B cells. T cells, for now, we're going to think of them as primarily fighting virally infected cells. And then your B cells or B lymphocytes are the cells that are going to produce your antibodies. You also find in lymphatic tissues macrophages, which are not lymphocytes. I should fix this slide. Remember, those are monocytes, a different agranulocyte white blood cell that, when it's not in the bloodstream, we call it a macrophage. And so, as it says here, they phagocytize whatever's not supposed to be in there, whether it's a pathogen like a virus or just a dead red blood cell. So we are going to talk about two different types of lymphatic tissue. One is lymphoid organs. So these are discrete structures with borders that are completely lymphatic tissue. And then there's what's called diffuse lymphatic tissue, which is just when you have, as we see here, lymphatic nodules inside of another tissue or a larger organ. So we're going to have some lymphatic tissue in the intestines. We're going to give that a name. And then here is a lymphatic nodule that you find in the lung. So first we're going to go over these discrete lymphoid organs, and then we'll talk very briefly about this diffuse lymphatic tissue. So the first lymphoid organ that we care about are the lymph nodes. What you want to know about the lymph nodes are the primary superficial accumulations, so inguinal, axillary, and cervical regions of the body is where you find large accumulations of superficial lymph nodes. This is one of your open-ended questions. So you have inguinal nodes, axillary nodes, and cervical nodes, all near the surface and in large numbers. The lymph nodes have two primary functions, to filter the lymph and to house the immune system. Don't get this confused with the two main functions of the lymphatic system, which is to return fluid to the bloodstream and to house the immune system. Let's see. So I am supposed to maybe include this as anatomy on the exam, but it never shows up on the exam, so don't worry about it. This is what a lymph node looks like. This is what a lymph node looks like under the microscope. Whoops. We may be looking at one in lab, I can't remember. What do we want to know about lymph nodes? Don't worry about where different cells are located. What I want you to know about lymph nodes is what's underlined here, which is that the lymphatic cells, the T cells and the B cells that you find there, don't reside there permanently. So they circulate through the bloodstream into the lymph nodes, back into the bloodstream, and then into the lymph nodes again. So this means that all of your immune cells are always circulating throughout the body. And you're going to see later when we talk about your immune system having memory, that then means that this memory is distributed throughout the body so that no matter where an infection shows up, in a cut in your toe versus a cut in your fingers, your immune cells can circulate and fight infection no matter where they find it. Then we get to the spleen. What you want to know about the spleen is what is underlined here. Its primary function is to remove dead blood cells, primarily red blood cells, from the bloodstream. And that's really all we care about the spleen. That's what the spleen looks like. You'll never see it. I don't think we look at it in lab. The thymus, what you want to know about the thymus is primarily that last point right there. This is where your T cells mature. And that's where the name T cell comes from. They're thymic cells. And I only have 4 minutes to get through the rest of this chapter, so we're going to leave, that's the thymus, it's where T cells mature, and we won't talk about it anymore. Then you have the tonsils. This, as this says right here, is a ring of lymphatic tissue that you can find around the pharynx. The pharynx just means your throat, the back of your throat. It is thought that the primary job of the tonsils is to, as it says here, sample environmental pathogens. So whatever you're eating is going down in your stomach. Your stomach is a pit of acid. So you can eat a lot of bacteria, you can eat a lot of viruses, and you're not necessarily going to get an infection from it, especially because we generally cook our food. So your food contains a lot of bacteria and viruses that are found within the environment, but they don't generally have the ability to infect you through your gastrointestinal system. So your immune system sets up shop in your throat and samples viruses and bacteria, learns how to fight them, and then because the cells that live here circulate throughout your body, if you get a cut in your finger years later, your immune system has already seen that bacteria or virus that gets in the cut, and it knows how to fight it wherever it is. So that's tonsils. Appendix is, as you can see, where is it? Right there. It's this little finger-like projection that hangs off the bottom of your large intestine, and it has a number of lymphoid nodules. Primarily what we think it does right now, but there isn't scientific consensus on this, is that it actually serves as a reservoir of good bacteria, so that if you get the flu and you have diarrhea, right, you empty out your colon can repopulate the good bacteria from the appendix. Those are the individual lymphoid organs that you need to know. Then you just need to know that you can find lymphatic tissue in lots of other organs. The only example of diffuse lymphatic tissue you need to know is the Peyer's patches, and you just need to know that they are, as this says here, clusters of lymphoid follicles that you find in the small intestine. And we are not going to give them a function because, as I understand it, that function is still up for debate. There's a lot of active debate right now as to exactly what the lymphatic system embedded within your intestines does, how that's related to things like celiac disease and irritable bowel disease, and these connections between your overall health, gut health, and your bacterial flora that live within your digestive tract. So it's very much still open for debate. This is what Peyer's patches look like. Here are all the lymphatic nodules, and this is the inside of the small intestine. And that is chapter 19 in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. See you in class after spring break.